It's egregious. I mean, that's the kind of thing that's the kind of reason that Americans hired President Trump to come in, clean up waste, fraud, and abuse. And if the waste, fraud, and abuse occurs in a program like SNAP, that's an essential program. Look, we fund it in my appropriations bill. The fact of the matter is, if it's occurring in a program that is supposed to deliver for the truly needy, and it delivers for people who are scamming the system, delivers it to states where they are not paying attention to who actually should be on the program and who shouldn't be on the program, I mean, I just think that's an improvement.
Congressman, but when you talk about health care,
yeah,
a lot of working people have jobs that don't include health insurance.
Yeah, so they have no worry because if you work, you're eligible for the Medicaid expansion. I mean, it's just that simple. You know, the people that I listen to the rhetoric of Mr. Jeffries. The fact of the matter is, you know, hardworking Americans are going to lose their health care. Really? How? We have a work requirement of 20 hours a week. Now, I will bet everybody in this audience worked 20 hours a week. Yeah, you qualify for Medicaid. You're not getting thrown off. Now, if you choose not to work, if tomorrow you say, you know what, I'm going to get free health care from the government, I'm just not going to work anymore. No, you're not going to get free health care from the government. You're going to actually have to work if you're able-bodied without dependents. So look, that rhetoric is just false. I mean, I can't use any other word. The fact of the matter is, no hard-working American is going to lose their health care. Now, if you define someone who crossed the border illegally into America as an American, yeah, they could lose their Medicaid coverage. But an overwhelming majority of Americans agree they shouldn't have been on Medicaid coverage in the first place.
Do you think this is a positive or negative for Republicans heading into the midterms next year?
I think when Americans realize that without this bill, the average hardworking American family would have paid thousands of dollars more in taxes, that this is going to secure the border, this is going to end some of the waste, fraud, and abuse that was blatant in the food stamp program, the SNAP program, and Medicaid. I think they're going to go, yeah, when I look at the totality of this package, this is a pretty darn good package, and I'm glad it passed.
Congressman Harris.
Yes.
Baltimore Sun.
Yeah.
Here.
Hey there.
Here. So I just want to ask you,
yes,
on behalf of the Baltimore Sun and Maryland, how does this bill impact Maryland and Baltimore City?
Well, it does everything in Maryland, Baltimore City that it does for the rest of the nation. I mean, look, if you live in Baltimore City and you're an illegal alien and you somehow manage to get your way into Medicaid rolls, you're going to lose money. If you are choosing not to work,
Does that mean? John, you make sure you have this.
Okay, if Maryland, you know, Maryland's a pretty rich state. If they think that's not a good idea, then you know what? Put some of your money in the bucket and provide those benefits. They're no longer going to be provided by federal taxpayers.
How does it impact tips?
How does it impact?
The tips.
We eliminate tax on tips up to a certain level. I mean, so the tipped wage earners, who are so important in many industries, are going to actually benefit. I mean, if there is one of the aspects of this that has been mentioned to me the most in the last few months, it's going into a place where where you're served by
disabilities, children, pregnant women.
Been working on this for a while. But yeah, the last couple of days we kind of run into one long but big and beautiful day with this outcome.
What does it say about your conference that you eventually got this across the finish line in time for what the president wanted?
Focused, committed. I think the speaker said it. The last 4 years has been a rough go for this country. And the American people need relief. They need hope. And this bill has that wrapped up in all the various historic economic policies, fiscal reforms, the investment in our safety and security. So it is the most comprehensive set of conservative reforms, I think, in my lifetime. Certainly, I think in modern history potentially, but it couldn't come at a more desperately needed time. And I think that's what kept us focused and less focused on the various constituencies and within our conference and the divergent caucuses, but on like what do we need to do to make America stronger, safer, and more prosperous. And so it's hard to do in a group this big. Obviously, President Trump helped us keep that clarity and focus, but today it's a reality. At least it will be when the president signs it, and it feels really good.
Mr. Chairman, I know that you did not think the bill from the Senate was perfect coming back. I think you've said it was a worse version of it.
Yeah.
Why not just go through this July 4th deadline, which frankly is not a legislative deadline?
Yeah.
You could have made changes and sent it back. Why not do that?
It's a great question, and it was the question that I pondered for the last at least 48 hours with a lot of my colleagues who are mostly concerned with the threat of a runaway deficit and a looming debt crisis. So the question was, will this get better if we send it back to the Senate? Obviously, there were good things, improvements, and things that I thought got worse from when we sent it there. But the one issue we cared the most about, especially budget hawks, was the deficit, and was making sure that we are bringing down that debt and deficit to GDP and restoring the fiscal health of the country. Now, I think we're doing that with this bill, but we were doing it in greater measure in the House bill. So the question was, would it get better if we sent it over there? But what are the probabilities that it got worse or that it failed and then you lost all the wins that we did achieve?
Well, how come they can jam you and you can't jam them?
Well, that's a great age-old philosophical question. I think we led the process. I think the House, if you ask anyone, the House budget resolution, the fiscal framework, influenced the entire process. We would have never had the levels of spending reduction, 2 times the most in the history of this country, and other fiscal reforms in healthcare and welfare and beyond if it weren't for our framework. But, it was never going to meet every jot and tittle of the framework because we had to work within our own conference, but then ultimately we had another entire chamber. But the answer that I got after talking to the president, White House officials, and my own leadership, the prospect of it getting better versus losing these historic achievements was too risky to take. And so we took the Ronald Reagan 80-20 and we declare it a victory for the American people.
There are several members of the Freedom Caucus that said they were no's yesterday. And then they went to the White House, they came back, all of a sudden now they're yeses because of guarantees President Trump made them that they will not share with us or with the public. How is that transparent? Shouldn't the public have a right to know? They can read the bill, but they don't know what secret deal was made to get these people to yes? I mean, do you see a problem there?
You'd have to ask the people that were promised things.
They're not answering the question.
Well, I can't answer for you because I'm not wasn't a part of those conversations. The promises that I've made and that Republicans in Congress have made are written in this document for the world to see. And I've been very transparent about my position the entire way, and I fought very hard for my children and generations of Americans with respect to the debt that's mounting that they are going to have to deal with, 36 trillion and counting, and that was something that I took great pains to make sure was at the fore of our debate, and I'm proud that it came out better than it would have had we not been in the fight. That's just kind of how you have to look at these imperfect legislative processes. It's it's not pretty, and you don't get to control it all. We don't believe in kings, and but the outcome was very, very positive, and I think it meets that Ronald Reagan 80-20 threshold. As he said, take the 80% and then come back and fight for the other. You know what the fight for the other looks like? It looks like the next budget cycle to me. It looks like the next rescissions package to me. And it looks like maybe 2 more bites at future reconciliation apples. So it was time to call the question and move this to the president's desk and into the lives of the American people, and then live to fight another day for more fiscal sanity in our nation's capital and a much more sustainable fiscal trajectory. You know, that's the beat of my heart, and a lot more work to be done. I will acknowledge that. Thank you. Yep. Thanks for your questions. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. You know why? Because you've got to contrast what's happened over the last few years under Democrat unified leadership. Historic.
To undo the damage of the changes in the Senate that we thought would undermine the effectiveness of what we did on the Green New Scam subsidies. So we had good conversations with our lawyers that we thought would be possible.
Does that mean like Treasury guidance? Do you think could be changed?
I'll let the president deal with that. I'm not going to give specifics. We talked to people with expertise that gave us great comfort. As I just explained to one reporter, look, I could go back and try to get 100% bird in hand fix to the solution legislatively, which would have taken weeks and go through the horn, or I could take what I think was probably an 80% bird in hand of what we were able to achieve with what I think the administration could do, and I chose the latter.
Congressman, you expressed a lot of hesitation,
yeah,
a lot of questions about this bill.
Yeah.
Americans, your voters, watching you now as a yes.
Yeah.
Can you just walk us through how you got there and really what changed and changed things for you to get to yes?
Sure. Well, first of all, yesterday we got significant conversations with the executive branch about what they can do to deal with the ridiculous amendment that was thrown in at the last minute, the 11th hour in the Senate on the Green New Scam subsidies. We were also able to get some significant, I think, assurances on what they're doing on spending, things they can do, as we've been talking about, rescissions through the pocket rescission process that the executive branch is carrying out, plus other things that I can't quite get into at the moment that I think will have significant impact on spending. But finally, most importantly, look, through the whole process, at every turn, we've had times where we've actually pulled the trigger and voted no. I took down the bill in the Budget Committee. We've done it in the past. But sometimes you have to just take a step back and say, look, we're going to take the wins, right? So earlier in this process, they said, you're not going to get more than about $300 billion. We got $1.6 trillion. They said, you're not going to get anything on Medicaid. We got $1 trillion on Medicaid, work requirements, serious reforms, provider tax changes that they said we couldn't get. In the House, they said, you can't get provider taxes. We were even told you can't get provider taxes. We had a fight with leadership and even with the White House about provider taxes. And then we were able to work with the Senate to get that through on the Senate side. Then we were able to they said, oh, you're not going to be able to touch the signature agenda item of Biden on the Green New Scam subsidies. And we did. We got about $500 billion worth. So, but at each stage, you take the win. Here at the end, the question was what did the Senate do? I would have liked to have gotten more, let's be clear, but it's a good bill overall in terms of what it does on tax policy, spending, historic mandatory reductions, and importantly, the Green New Scam subsidy repeals that I think now the executive branch can make sure happen.
You mentioned assurances from the White House. Can you be more specific?
No, I'll let them do that. That's their job.
But you mean wind and solar in particular has been what you've been concerned about?
I mean, that's the lion's share of the subsidies. I would prefer to hit I would have hit them all equally. Carbon sequestration, batteries, all of it. I think all of it. None of them should be subsidized. Yes, I would treat them all equally, although nuclear is so hamstrung by regulatory stuff, I'm less bothered by their subsidies, but I would get rid of all the subsidies.
Do you think permitting changes are key to this, where they can sort of force them to go through every last permitting
That's
thing and not
that's
fast-track
that's
it?
certainly a big part of it. There are other things that you'll see the administration doing that gave me great comfort yesterday about where the president is on those particular forms of energy. We just need to level the playing field and get the government out of the business of picking winners and losers. The president agrees with that. I got great comfort in that. I think they can fix some of the damage done by the Senate, and they can do that fully under the law, and I got comfortable with that talking to their lawyers. Yeah.
Tim Burchett told us a little while ago, he said, you know what, the debt ceiling is just a fraud. We ought to do away with it entirely.
I disagree. With all due respect to Sam, he's a good man, but debt ceiling is important. We ought to hold on to it. Frankly, we ought to use it more. I wouldn't have increased the debt ceiling $5 trillion, but, I'm 1/435th of 1/2 of 1/3. So that's my voting power.
It's pretty hard.
The National Budget Office estimates that up to 12 million Americans will lose their health insurance over the course of a decade.
Yeah, the Congressional Budget Office also estimated that the work requirements would be 90% effective. They won't be. They don't get everything right. No, but the fact is they're also talking about people that we're saying there ought to be work requirements attached to. So we're saying that we need to have only the vulnerable population who truly need care being able to use Medicaid, that we need to get more people who are able-bodied and working to be doing so. So we think we made good changes. The eligibility requirements are important. You have people who are ineligible that are on Medicaid, and they're sucking away resources from the eligible, the most vulnerable. By the way, we only touched the tip of the iceberg on what we need to do. God bless the Senate for at least adding in the provider tax, the one good thing they did. But we didn't even touch the FMAP rate, and we should have. But it's a good bill overall. Man, $1.6 trillion, and we actually touched Medicaid. They said we never would, and we got $1 trillion of savings. To be clear, all that does is put us back on the pre-Biden COVID trajectory. Go look at the chart. We're literally at the level where you would have been before Biden coming out of COVID. So it's a step back to put it back in line. We frankly need to do more reforms.
Did the administration make any Medicaid commitments in the past few days?
I want to be a little careful there, but I will say yes. We had some good conversations about what they can do to go after, use their current law to be able to go after Medicaid waste, fraud, and abuse in states and claw some of those dollars back to force some issues on that, and I think they're going to do that. Yeah.
Congressman, a lot of Freedom Caucus members are saying they were no's yesterday firmly. Now they're yeses after they got agreements and assurances from President Trump. But nobody will say what those assurances are.
Well, I've been out here telling all these guys that, we had very specific conversations about what the executive branch can do with respect to the Green New Scam subsidies. The fact that the Senate added an amendment at the tail end that gave us real concern and pause that we didn't think we could support. We believe the administration is aligned with us on terminating those Green New Scam subsidies. We believe we're going to get 90+% of all future projects terminated. And we've talked to lawyers in the administration. We believe that's true. We also got some other assurances about how we're going to deal with future spending, some of the things on rescissions and pocket rescissions and future reconciliation packages. Look, would I have rebooted and done a little bit more? Yeah. But as I just said, I'm 1/435th of 1/2 of 1/3. You got to figure out how to move the deal.
But isn't one of the core tenets of the Freedom Caucus, of its founding, transparency in government? How is this transparent? No American knows what got you guys from no to yes.
I'm telling you what they are right here. But besides, I'm also telling you that along the line, you keep pressing for what you can get. And we got $1 trillion of Medicaid, $1.6 trillion in costs, $500 billion of Green New Scam subsidies peeled back. We got work requirements. We got food stamp change. They said we'd never touch food stamps. You can't touch it. Then we did. Then we forced it so that it wouldn't be going to illegal aliens. We got serious dollars in for on the border stuff when they said we wouldn't, that we'd have to end up putting amnesty in there to get that stuff. We didn't.
But those were all in the bill when you said you were a no.
Those were not in the bill when we said we were a no in February, and then we negotiated those in. Remember who voted the bill down in the Budget Committee? Was it you? No, it was me.
That was you.
And so we voted it down, and what do we get for that? Green New Scam subsidy stuff. Back when they said we couldn't get Medicaid, it was us who then formulated what? We put together a working group, right? It was a framework where we came out of Budget Committee with my friend Jody Arrington, who was just over here, the Budget Committee chairman, and we forced them to the table. Guess what? We got $1.5 trillion of savings, including Medicaid. All of that adds up. And then here at the end, through last night, we were a no. I was a no. There were definitively enough no's. Right up through about 2 a.m. until we got pretty good understanding of where things are with what the lawyers can do in the administration to stop the continued subsidies going to these ridiculous private corporations that are undermining our grid. Any last question over here?
What do you think the odds are of another significant reconciliation bill before the midterms?
I bet there will be another reconciliation package. I don't think it'll be as big. I think there'll be some targeted stuff, but you'll have to ask the administration about that. But I think there's a good chance of that.
Congressman, what about
What's that?
Do you think that this bill, you had concerns about it, is it now a winning issue for the midterms? Do you think Republicans
No, I think it's a winning issue. I mean, like, again, do I think it's perfect? No bill that Congress produces is perfect. But does it extend tax cuts for the people that I represent who badly wanted it? Yes. Does that include standard deductions and lower tax rates and child tax credits and things that are important for people across the income strata? Yes. Does it actually do what we said we were going to do on Medicaid reforms and making serious changes there? Yes. Does it save $1.6 trillion compared to what we were going to spend? Yes. These are all winning issues. Does it fund the border so that we can remove dangerous illegal aliens? Yes. We've got tons of winning issues in there, including funding defense, modernizing the military, and I think responsibly trying to deal with our deficits. I would have gone further, as I've been very clear. I do think there was too much front loading. I do think there's things we could have done better. But I think that the bill, at the end of the day, is a powerful statement for the differences and the priorities of the president and this administration and our Democratic colleagues. Thanks, guys.
Let's go. Okay. We're going to be close.